wonderful to see all of you. This is our third installment of Carmel Prepares. My name is Wanda Balmer, and I'm with the Carmel CERT team, the Community Emergency Response team. And once again, we welcome you all for coming here. So we're going to start with a presentation from the Carmel Police Department, the Monterey Fire Department, the Department of Emergency Management, Carmel Library, and we have two meteorologists from the San Francisco Bay Area Forecast Office. And we have the Department of Emergency Management written twice, sorry about that. And then we're followed by the question and answer portion. So without further ado, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the purpose of Carmel Prepares. So the reason we started Carmel Prepares is that we want to educate and inform the residents and businesses on how to get resilient before disasters do happen. And we can learn what you can expect and how our local resources and businesses are equipped to respond. So it's also important to understand what our professionals can do to help our community, but it's also very important to understand how you can protect yourself. And for today's particular session, we want to cover winter storms and earthquakes. So that will be the topic for today. And I'm going to start off with our Chief Paul Tomasi.
Thank you, Wanda. Thank you all for being here and taking time out of your day, Saturday morning. I'm sure we all have chores or other things to do, but this is important to us and it should be important to you as well, being prepared for winter storms and earthquakes. And again, that's what we're talking about. I want to thank our community partners who are also here. This has grown since the last time we did it, and we have more representatives for you to ask questions afterwards specific to you and how they can help. Which is the button? I got it. I want to talk to you a little bit about preparedness. The city of Carmel-by-the-Sea is very well prepared. You have police, public works, the library. You have emergency operations center, which we have here in the city. So we can operate very well through emergencies, and we have through many in the past. You have the police department, which operates 24/7, 365 days of the year. We also have our own dispatch center, which really helps us coordinate events and get you emergency response services quickly. We're here all the time. A fact you may not know is we are the only city in the county with our own dispatch center, and we are able to provide that service for you. We also have parking, animal control, our community emergency response team, which is in the house. See all the green vests? And our volunteers in policing services over here in the black with the white hats. So we're here. Again, we're talking about earthquakes and winter storms at this meeting, which we are familiar with here, living here. But I want to also just briefly, a little bit of overview of how we respond to emergencies. Again, we're prepared here in Carmel to respond to emergencies, and we have many times, many winter storms we've had. So we operate here, Carmel, with our Emergency Operations Center. But to coordinate with other agencies, we operate in the National Incident Management System. This is a system that was designed in early 2000, so all agencies are operating under the same plans, the same playbook. That way, if we reach out to Pacific Grove or Monterey and say, hey, we need help, they can come over and they follow the same plan that we follow. This is a well-developed plan. So if we need help, we reach out locally to our partner cities. And then if we need more help, we can even reach out to the county. And we have the county here with the Department of Emergency Management right back here, who are going to give you a presentation on how they can help us through winter storms and earthquakes. But if an incident is so big, we need even more help, that National Incident Management System expands out to the state. And you're all aware that sometimes storms are so bad or an earthquake is so bad that it's declared a national disaster or a natural disaster, and then we're eligible for state funding. That's when the governor's office says, hey, I'm going to allocate money to you. This was most recently done for the 2023 storms we just went through. Look at our beach stairwell. Look at the pathways. Look at all the trees that came down. that was deemed a natural disaster and money was made available to us. It is a huge process that goes not only through the state, but then federal through FEMA. So we've already completed all of that process, and now we're in the final stages where we can get reimbursed for a lot of the costs and the loss that we suffered. So that's really how the system works. So we don't operate alone, we operate collectively through a much larger group through emergencies. I put this slide up just to show you a little bit where we are right now. Right now, we're in the preparedness stage. That's what we're doing here. When an incident hits, we get into the response mode, and that's what we're preparing for. We are still in the recovery and mitigation stage for even some of the emergencies we had, like 2023 storms. Those take a while sometimes to recover from, and that's what we're doing. But that's the cycle of the emergency incident. Okay, if you have a phone, this is an important slide you may want to take a picture of. This has all the important numbers you will need in a storm or in an emergency. I'm going to move out of the way so you don't get me in there. When the phones go down, I'll change slides. But this has all the important numbers you would need to get a hold of somebody in an emergency. And the next slide, everybody have it? Okay. This one came up last time, and I just want to cover it again before we get into this whole thing. Evacuation routes. People always ask me, what are they? Do you have them? This is on our website. So if you go to the city website, you can see our evacuation routes. An important thing about an evacuation route, if you live here, you have a set pattern of the way you come in and out of town and get to your house. You can know your evacuation route, but in an emergency, that one route that you use all the time might not be available to you. If it's Rio Road, it might be flooded. If it's Carpenter, we may have a tree down and you might not be able to get out. So it's important to understand other access points in and out of the city. And in an emergency, we would be able to give you that information through our notification system, which you're going to learn more about today. I want to touch a little bit on this. We don't have a representative from Public Works, but your Public Works department is such a key component to our emergency response and preparation. Public Works, they're the workers of the city. They're out preparing for storms if we know they're coming. They are clearing drains. They're setting up barricades, getting ready for anything that could happen, including putting out sand and sandbags and making that available to you should there be localized flooding. I should be on this slide. But during a storm, they're also part of our emergency response. They're out responding, whether it being closing roads because a tree is down or getting rid of some of the localized flooding and cleaning and clearing drains during a storm. They're the hard workers here for the city, and then even afterwards, getting out and cleaning up afterwards. So I did want to mention them. And that's all I have for you, and we'll continue with the presentation, but I want to introduce Monterey Fire, which is your fire department here in Carmel, and Chief Cooper.
Thank you, Chief.
That button.
The top one?
The middle one.
Middle one. Got it. So good morning. My name is Justin Cooper. I'm a division chief here with Monterey Fire Department, one of 3 on-duty division chiefs that is here 24/7 to respond to emergencies both in the city of Carmel, also Monterey, Pacific Grove, and the airport. So a little bit about Monterey Fire Department. Obviously, we're an all-risk department. So what does that mean? We respond to any type of emergency, both Code 3 emergencies or Code 2 emergencies, from everything from fires, water rescues, hazardous conditions like the stairs being swept away off of Carmel Beach, to even cats and trees. So we do go on anything and everything. But part of it is we do a lot of emergency response, medical related, also assisting people that have fallen that need help getting back up. But we are in throughout the community here. But as of right now, when I get to the next slide here to talk a little bit about Monterey Fire Department, This is kind of our operational staffing model. For our operational area, I have 6 fire stations. Consists of 6 fire engines, 1 ladder truck. The ladder truck's the big one with the ladder on the top. There's a guy in the back steering the back tires of that rig. We have an ARF unit, which stands for Airport Rescue, Fire, and Crash. So if you fly out of Monterey, we have a unit that's there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to cover the commercial flights. We have obviously the ambulance here in Carmel-by-the-Sea, and then the duty chief that also responds. We cross-staff a lot of pieces of equipment. Probably some of you in this room don't know we have a fireboat. We respond to any water rescue, both in Carmel here off our coast, but also to protect the harbors, Fisherman's Wharf, Wharf number 2, and stuff like that. Part of it is yes, we are a small department. We can't do it alone. We work well with our collaborating agencies, CAL FIRE being a big one here in the room. Give these guys a round of applause. Seaside, Monterey County Regional Fire Department. You could see any one of these fire departments in our operational area helping us respond to calls. We respond to, in our operational footprint, about 10,000 calls a year. So that's pretty large amount of call volume for only having what we have. But we're able to do it efficiently and effectively and get the job done. We do IAPs, which is an incident action plan. You can see the one up in the upper right-hand corner was for the March storm incident last year, where that gets out to our CERT teams, it gets out to our line duty personnel of what to expect for these type of emergencies. So some storm safety tips real quick. We talk about emergency disaster kit. We like to make sure that you're prepared in the event of an emergency. FEMA likes to have everyone have a disaster kit and be prepared for 72 hours on your own. So how much water do you need? How much food do you need? Batteries, flashlights, all that stuff. So if you got questions on that stuff too, you can see me afterwards, and there's obviously different lists out there for recommendations. We do go on a lot of wires down and trees down, especially here in Carmel-by-the-Sea. We really value our trees and our wildlife, but that also causes some hazards where sometimes the storms cause trees to come down and it pulls down wires. And then what do we have? We're out of power for quite some time. So we do deal with those emergencies. Driving and safety hazards, we always recommend too, during the storms, and we know we have a major Pacific storm coming through. It's not necessarily a good time to go around and check things out, right? We got trees coming down, we got wires out there, we got other hazards. We want to make sure you're safe. If you don't need to be out on the roadway, we like you guys not to be out on the roadway because we do have a lot of emergency response happening during those times. And then the big one right now for us in our operational area, I'm sure you've been down to the beach. We got pretty large waves right now. Yeah, we have a high surf advisory. It's about 15 foot down along the beach. We also have king tides. So the high tide's pushing a lot of water up the beach. Real quick on interoperability, requesting additional resources. When we get hammered with calls, we do call in off-duty staffing. We also mobilize our CERT teams, so thank you to the CERT teams that are here too. We can bring them into our operational area to have them help us respond to calls and relieve our fire units on calls for like those wires down calls, because we can't just walk away from that call. Mutual aid, once again, CAL FIRE and all of our adjoining agencies will come into the operational area. I am also one of 3 area fire coordinators for the Monterey County operational area. So what that entails is when we do get these incidents, we could bring basically units from all over the state into our area to help out. Last year during the storms, we had CAL FIRE units from outside of our area coming in to backfill stations. We've had swift water rescue teams coming into our area to help out from Menlo Park for the Carmel River area. So we have the ability to bring any of that stuff into our operational area to help us out. And then obviously CERT, which I talked about. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to the Carmel Public Library. Thank you.
So why is the library in here, do you ask? So we've been working over the last year and a half or so to turn the Park Branch Library into a warming, cooling center for everybody, a charging station, during emergencies, because we know that the first thing that happens when it gets windy in Carmel, the power goes out. And one of the things we learned during the pandemic was that we can library pretty much from anywhere. So the first thing that I do when I know that the power may go out, we're expecting a storm, is I send all of my staff home with their laptops. We can answer phones from anywhere. I have people who live in Gilroy and King City, and they can, if they've got power and they've got internet, they can still answer your phone calls, and we can still share information about what's happening in town, how long the power is expected to be out. We can look at those PG alerts that you might not be able to see and share that information with you. So I'm so glad to be working with CERT and with the VIPs. So for some reason, the weather is so bad, the storm's so bad, the earthquake's so bad, I can't get into town. We have VIPs who live here and have been trained to open the library up so that we can set up our charging stations. We have battery-operated, solar-powered charging stations. We just had some upgrades done to the generator at the park branch, which actually manages the sump pump because we're on a spring there. And that can keep some of the lights on, and I'm hoping the internet going as well, as long as we have access. The Harrison Library on Ocean is a little trickier because it's a huge building, 5 levels, but we do have generators there as well. And then as we recover from storms, keeping those charging stations open. What we saw after the last storm season was a lot of people who work from home were looking for places to work. And so we kept those charging stations deployed and the meeting room at the Harrison open when we had power restored so that everybody can just sit and keep doing their work. So, and we had, snacks and games and all kinds of things. I don't want to say it was super fun at the park branch, but a lot of neighbors who didn't know each other got to know each other and got to meet some of the families that regularly come into the branch, who had kids who are like, "Who are you? What are you doing here? This is the kids' library." So it was very much a community activity. And so we're going to continue to do that, continue to build on that as we go along. So just know that if it's something you're not sure about, and it's definitely not a 911 call, and you have tried the other numbers, try the library, because we're waiting for your call, and the library will be open and ready for you. And now I'm going to turn it over to the National Weather Service. Before I do, I want to say this is being recorded, so if you have people who couldn't be here today, it will be up on the city's website. There's a Carmel Prepares button right at the top when you look at it, and the slides will be up as well. And check out the CERT table. All the phone numbers you see, there's handouts. You can take them, grab a VIPS magnet, and stick them on your fridge, and that way you always have them. And now on to the National Weather Service to tell us what we should be expecting for the upcoming La Nina season.
All right, so my name is Rachel Kennedy. I am a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and my coworker Nicole is over there at our booth. So we are here today to talk to you about what we can expect this winter season and to give you guys some resources that you can use to help keep track of any watches, warnings, and stay on top of the weather in general as we go through this winter. Okay, so just to give you an idea of what kind of roadmap we're going to follow. So we're going to first talk about 2 larger scale things that will influence our weather, and then we're going to move through what we can actually expect, some other risks that we might expect throughout the winter, and then some potential resources you can use to just keep track of everything. All right. So the first thing we want to talk about is the El Niño Southern Oscillation, also referred to as ENSO. So how many of you are familiar with the fact that we were in an El Niño technically last year? All right, most of us. All right, so an El Niño is officially defined as when our sea surface temperatures are 0.5 degrees warmer than normal. In that case, we would typically see warmer waters along our coastline, and we might see storms shift more frequently into our area. The opposite would be when we have a La Nina, which is going to be all the way on the right, where our sea surface temperatures are going to be 0.5 degrees cooler than normal. In that case, we might expect to see storms shifted more towards our north, which can sometimes lead to drier conditions in our region. When we have a more neutral environment, we're not substantially 0.5 degrees warmer or 0.5 degrees cooler, and that's just kind of our standard state. Okay. So this year, we are expected to be in a La Nina phase. We're still in a La Nina watch at the moment, meaning it hasn't fully developed. So What we look for in a typical La Nina pattern is going to be something like this. So we can see that the Pacific Northwest is generally colder and wetter, while the southern United States is generally drier and warmer. For us, however, it's a little trickier because we fall flat out in the middle of that, as we'll talk about in a bit. So these are the model forecasts for ENSO prediction for this winter. So as we can see, the consensus is largely on the La Nina side. So in that case, we know our waters are trending cooler. However, it's worth noting that any La Nina that does develop is going to be fairly weak. So we might actually be very closer to more of a neutral phase to a weak La Nina. So what does that actually mean for our weather? Here are examples of strong, moderate, and weak La Ninas from the last many years. And so in our case, we want to focus on the bottom section for the weak La Ninas. In about 2 of these cases, we see California is much wetter than normal, but in the majority of these cases, California is much drier than normal. With that kind of in mind, we can have a pretty strong indication that we'll probably be drier than normal, but again, we do fall in the middle, so there's always that potential to get more rainfall. So when we don't really have quite as strong a signal from our ENSO prediction, we look at 2 more intraseasonal variabilities, such as the Madden-Julian Oscillation and the Arctic Oscillation. So the Madden-Julian Oscillation can essentially tell us where storms are located in the Pacific Ocean, and depending on the phase, that can give us an idea of if storms are more likely to reach our area or not. Similarly, the Arctic Oscillation can tell us how far north or south the storm track is going to go, which will again give us an idea of if the storms will make it into our area or if they're going to be too far north or south of us. So now that you've got all that background, we're going to take a look at the seasonal outlooks that we have so far from the Climate Prediction Center. So for us, looking at temperature and precipitation, the majority of our areas do fall into equal chances of above or below average temperatures and precipitation. So that effectively means there's a 33.33% chance of going either way. So the one thing to take away from this is that while we do have equal chances, we are already seeing signs of a typical La Nina pattern emerging, where in the southern United States, we can see it's a lot drier. It's a lot drier in the southern United States, while the Pacific Northwest is already showing above average precipitation tendencies. So that gives us a little indication that while our La Nina is going to be fairly weak, we are showing signs of it. When we move into the December through February timeframe, again, we still fall into the equal chances rain region, but we are still seeing signs of the La Nina kind of developing further, where we have more below average temperatures across the Pacific Northwest and warmer across the southern United States, and then we similarly see the above and below average precipitations in the same area as we did before. The important thing to know is that as we move into January through March, we can start to see that above average precipitation regions start to stretch into Northern California. The one thing that might indicate is our storm track might be shifting farther south, which could indicate a slightly increasing potential for us to get storms down here. We'll start to know more as we get closer to that time frame. And then as we move into the February to April timeframe, we can again see the above average precipitation does extend in Northern California, and that would indicate the storm track might be again to our area. And then as we move into the March, April, May timeframe, that's moving out of our rainier season and into the drier timeframe. So we'll really start to see our rain chances drop off around then. So I know we're in the equal chances for pretty much the whole winter so far, as we kind of fall in the middle of that La Nina scale. This is going to be a winter when those intra-seasonal variabilities are going to play a much more important role on especially the shorter term scale, and is really an indicator that everyone should continue to stay weather aware, as we still have the potential for those stronger storms to develop, even if we're in the equal chances right now. So a few other things just to keep in mind. So the king tides is basically when we have anomalously high waters. This is mainly for the San Francisco Bay region, but it's something to keep in mind that this is a pretty good winter phenomenon. A few other threats that are a little more local, so like the fire department was talking about earlier, we do have a high surf advisory right now. So as we go through winter, it's more likely to have more dangerous surf. especially we'll be putting out those high surf advisories if that occurs. Things to know is if you're at the beach during a high surf advisory, never turn your back on the ocean, always be prepared for sneaker waves, things like that. And then another coastal threat, which I know we're all pretty familiar with in Carmel, is the threat of coastal flooding, especially for things like lagoons, beaches, low-lying areas. So especially if you live in a flood-prone area, make sure to pay attention to any storms that are moving inland and just be prepared. Always be prepared. Okay. And then something else to keep in mind is make sure you're familiar with the definitions of warning, advisory, and watch, and to know the differences between the three of them. So think, for example, if you're in a warning, you need to take immediate protective action. If you're in advisory, you still should take action, more use caution. And if you're in a watch, that's when you're still preparing for an event to occur and you should have a plan of action prepared. Okay. And then just to kind of wrap up, so these are a few resources you can use to just keep a track of our forecast, any watches, warnings, advisories that are issued. So the first resource is going to be our National Weather Service webpage, which you can access at weather.gov/Bay Area. And then you can also create individualized forecast points using the weather.gov/forecast points, and that'll give you an individual forecast for your area. Other sites would be the California-Nevada River Forecast Center. That's going to give you a good idea about hydrology, anything to do with rivers, rainfall totals. It'll give you a forecast essentially for any river flooding that may occur. So that's always helpful to look at if you're concerned about flooding. And then other things, so you can always follow us on any of our social media on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and that will give you real-time updates as we post warnings, watches, advisories, and just updates on storms as they move through. Okay. And then finally, we really just want to drive home that while we are in equal chances so far for this winter, you should really be prepared for any strong storms that may develop, and we cannot rule out any storms developing. So we always need to remember to stay prepared and stay weather aware so we can be ready and be a weather ready nation. All right. And with that, I'm going to pass it to the Department of Emergency Management.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Estrada, and I'm from the Monterey County Department of Emergency Management. And one thing that I want you to know about me is that last year, when the Pajaro levee broke, my parents were trapped in their home. My son was there. He was 9 years old at the time. I didn't get to see him for 2 days. It was a really scary, sad thing. 2 of my family members had to evacuate their homes in Pajaro, and they lost all of their personal property. So beds, refrigerators, pictures, a lot of things that meant to them. And that is why I'm very honored and humbled to be here, so I can let you know what I've learned. And most importantly, I really want to be part of your community. Thank you. So we do 3 main things. We prepare, respond, and recover. You have no idea all the tests we go through in our work life. I work in different projects. And so, of course, my focus has always been in Pajaro. But all of a sudden, my manager will come in and she'll say, we have an emergency. And this is just to test us at how fast we can respond and send out notifications to the community. And if you ever get an audio voice message, it's usually me. It's English and Spanish, so I feel like a celebrity sometimes. We also respond. So when we say that we respond, we work with the community, local law enforcement, with the state. We are the point of contact. So we don't double our efforts. So we know what everybody is doing, and we can work effectively. Recover. Like I said, most of my projects have been in Pajaro, and so when the levee broke, people needed to come back to their homes. And so we bring resources, donations. It all depends on what the disaster really, how it impacted the community. So some really quick reminders on earthquakes and winter storms. So with earthquakes, we never know when it's going to happen. And when it happens, it affects our homes. It'll cause like a breakage through the roads. It could also even flood our rivers just because the tectonic plates have moved. And what are 3 simple things that we can do? We could drop, cover, and hold. So if you're in your home, find a table. I know that it can be very scary at the time, but I always recommend families to practice. I have 4 little children, and we always practice. So when an emergency happens, they're not like freaking out, they're not scared, they know what to do. Cover. You always want to protect your head and your neck. Those are the most important areas of your body. And hold on. Always try to be aware of your surroundings. If there's like a bookcase or a heavy mirror, be aware that those things can injure you. So if you are driving and there's an earthquake, the best thing you could do is pull over to the side. Don't try to speed up, try to get home as fast as possible. Just go with the flow. It will eventually end. If you're sleeping and there's an earthquake, always try to protect your head and your neck with your pillow. That's the best thing you could do at the moment because, of course, you're half asleep and you don't really know what's happening. So just be aware, again, that it's just a moment. If you are outside and there's an earthquake, again, be aware of your surroundings. Be in an area where nothing's going to fall on your body, on your head. Be in a very clear area. Oh, and of course, expect aftershocks. Of course, I remember in 1989, I was in first grade, and it was scary. It was when the time where, it was different times when your parents would leave you at home all by yourself, and I was with my twin brother. And I remember it was shaking. And I remember at school they told me, go under the table. And that's what I did. And I remember the aftershocks that at school they said, there's going to be aftershocks. Just stay calm. And I'm here today, right? Winter storms. So I work in communities that winter storms are really scary for families. Last week I went to the store and I saw a little girl with a backpack and she had like these 2 little parrots. And then I asked the mom, why does she have the parrots in the backpack? It's like those pet backpacks. And she said, last year her parrots died and she's scared. She's scared that her parrots are going to die again. The little girl was 5 years old. So it's very traumatic, the things that a community will go through. And so, like I said, it just inspires me to come and continue to remind people preparedness is key. And when I say preparedness, have a plan. Get with your family, talk about escape routes. If you get separated, you should at least have 3 places that you can go. Also, I actually brought like these workbooks. I apologize, they're in Spanish, but I'll bring some English ones. But they have all these series of questions like, what medications do you take? What's the name of your doctor? If you have pets, what kind of things will your pets need? What things should your Go backpack have just in case you have to evacuate your house? So just a quick question. Raise your hand. Who has 3 places that you can go if you have to evacuate your home? Okay, a few of us. So that's homework for today. Okay, and when there are these natural disasters happening, always pay attention to law enforcement, to firefighters. At that point, they probably already talked to us and we created a plan. I know that some of us sometimes are like, I'm a superhero, I'm gonna try to save my neighbor. stay safe. I highly recommend that you get with your neighbors and you talk about escape routes. If you live in a street that is just a one-way or a dead end, talk about the different ways that you could escape your area safely. The more you prepare, the better outcome you will have. And most importantly, I recommend Alert Monterey County. This is free. So you could use a QR, and then based on your zip code, if there's a natural disaster, you will get a text message or an email, audio, of course my voice, audio, and it will let you know what are the escape routes, if there's any shelters you have to go, if there's any roads that have been impacted by a disaster. It is very well informed. And like I said, this is free. At any point, if you don't want to use it anymore, you can take it out. Also, if you have other family members in the county, you could also plug in their zip code so you'll know what's happening in their area. And of course, we're the ones who send out the notifications. And like I mentioned, this is our Go backpack. These are a few things that you should have. Food for 3 days, water, flashlight, batteries, can opener, an evacuation plan, first aid kits, blankets, hygiene products, pet supplies. And always, you know what? My father's very traditional. He says, never have your gas tank at half. You should always have a little bit more than half. So I always carry that. Be prepared anytime, especially during rainy season. If you know that there's a high probability that you might evacuate, start preparing today. And a quick reminder, talk to your family about evacuation plans, emergency plans. What are things that you need to take out from your home if you have to evacuate? Plan and practice. Most importantly, practice. Like I said, I always practice with my children. Sometimes I'll come home and I just wonder what they're doing, and I ask them, "What are you guys doing?" "We're practicing for an earthquake." "Okay, cool. That's awesome." I feel like other parents think I'm weird or something, but like they're practicing, so that's good. They're having a good time. So thank you so much. And like I said, I really want to continue working with your community. I want to learn more. And if you have other resources and if you have other questions, please let me know. If you want more tips on how to stay prepared, you can always go to you could Google Department of Emergency Management, and you could, or Google Prepare Monterey County, and you'll get all this information. But definitely, Alert Monterey County is really good, a great resource. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to all the speakers. And again, a warm thank you for coming. And let's get prepared and let's stay safe, okay? Thank you.